Cop demands ID from black woman in uniform. But she's the captain of the flight. Airports are meant to be spaces of transition, a place where people from all walks of life cross paths, chasing opportunities and dreams. But sometimes, beneath the announcements for delayed flights and the echoing footsteps on polished floors, moments of bias and misunderstanding erupt. This story begins in the bustling concourse of Hartsfield-Jackson, Atlanta. International Airport, one of the busiest in the world. A police officer spots a poised black woman in a crisp pilot's uniform, questions the validity of her credentials, and demands proof she belongs there. Little does he realize that she is Captain Simone Carter, the commanding officer of the very flight he's about to board. Captain Simone Carter's day began before dawn, her alarm blaring at 4:00 a.m. in her condominium on the outskirts of Atlanta. She had grown used to early wake-up calls. Being a pilot required discipline and vigilance, and Simone embraced those qualities wholeheartedly. After a quick shower and an energizing breakfast shake, she donned the familiar navy blue American Airlines uniform she had worked years to earn. The wings gleamed on her lapel, a silent testament to her perseverance. Simone felt a surge of excitement about today's flight. American Airlines, Flight 784, from Hartsfield-Jackson, Atlanta, International Airport, to Los Angeles, LAX. She had flown countless routes in her decade-long career, but every takeoff still gave her a small thrill. The burst of power, the weightlessness, the promise of crossing continents today was no different. Driving to the airport in the pre-dawn darkness, Simone mentally reviewed the flight plan, weather conditions, flight time, potential air traffic around LAX. It all swirled in her head. She had studied the pilot's briefing meticulously the night before. Thanks to modern technology, she'd received updates via the airline's app on her phone, but she liked to cross-check everything on paper as well. Thoroughness was her trademark. By the time she pulled into the parking area reserved for flight crews, the first light of morning began to blush across the horizon. She entered the airport through a side door designed for employees, flashing her airline ID badge at the security checkpoint. Sleepy but polite TSA officers greeted her, some recognizing her from previous shifts. She was a fixture here, after all, with her proud posture and bright smile. No issues, no fanfare. Yet today, however, was a day for surprises. Simone walked through the corridors to the crew lounge, a place where flight attendants and pilots briefly gathered before flights. She grabbed a cup of coffee from the vending machine, a poor substitute for a cafe latte. But it would do. She scanned the lounge for her first officer, Wesley Chen, who was usually early. Sure enough, he waved at her from across the room. They exchanged a few words about the route and updated each other on final gate information. Everything appeared normal. At the appointed time, Simone and Wesley strode toward the departure gate, greeting gate agents and a few early bird passengers who recognized them as the flight crew. Simone paused to answer a question from a mother traveling alone with 2 children. The mother wanted to confirm if any special assistance was available for her toddler's stroller. Simone, always warm-hearted, reassured the woman that a flight attendant would help her store the stroller and get situated on board. The mother thanked her profusely. Just then, Simone felt a pair of eyes on her, an uneasy, lingering gaze. She glanced over to see a uniformed police officer standing near a row of seats. He was watching her intently, expression unreadable. Instinctively, Simone offered a polite nod. She never thought much of it. Cops patrolled the airport regularly, especially in busy hubs like Atlanta. She returned to finalizing details with the gate agent moments. Later, the officer approached, posture stiff, resting a hand casually near his holstered weapon. "Ma'am, may I see some identification?" "Please," he asked, his voice firm, but not overtly aggressive. Simone frowned, temporarily puzzled. She had already passed through crew security, so this request was unusual. Nevertheless, she reached for her airline ID badge, clipped to her jacket. "Of course," she said politely. "I'm Captain Simone Carter, American Airlines." She offered a mild smile. The officer barely glanced at her badge. "I'm going to need to see a government-issued photo ID too, and I'd like to ask you a few questions." Passengers milling about began to slow some with half-curious, half-concerned expressions. Wesley, noticing something amiss, inched closer, but waited to see how Simone would handle it. Simone's heartbeat quickened. She had encountered skepticism before, sometimes from passengers who didn't expect a black woman in the cockpit, but an official demanding ID out of the blue. That was new. "Certainly," she replied. She pulled out her wallet and retrieved her driver's license. Trying to remain calm, she handed it over. The officer examined it meticulously, as though expecting to find some forgery or mismatch. Simone sensed tension threading through the air. She suspected she was about to face a situation she couldn't resolve with a friendly smile. Alone, Officer Raymond Jenkins studied Simone's driver's license, like it held the secrets of the universe. Squinting, he compared the picture to Simone's face, flipping the card back and forth under the fluorescent lights of Gate D25. Travelers paused to witness the exchange, and a few whispered among themselves. Wesley Chen stepped forward. Voice calm. "Is there an issue?" Officer Jenkins ignored him, continuing to scrutinize Simone's ID. Finally, he spoke. "Captain Carter." "Is it? This is a busy airport. We got a report of someone in a pilot's uniform acting suspiciously." His tone was measured, but Simone noted a hint of condescension. She raised her eyebrows. "Suspiciously, how I've just been going through my normal routine, briefing my first officer greeting passengers." Wesley put a hand on her shoulder in support. "Officer, we've got a scheduled flight to LAX, leaving in about an hour. We need to run final checks. The gate agent can confirm we're the assigned cockpit crew." "Is that a problem?" Jenkins looked from Simone to Wesley, then back to Simone. "I'll ask the question, sir." His gaze lingered on the gold stripes at the cuffs of Simone's uniform, a detail marking her as the captain rather than a flight attendant or ground staff. "And where did you get this uniform, Ms. Carter?" Simone's patience thinned, but she stifled any sign of anger. "I earned it through years of flight training and experience, culminating in my captain's upgrade at American Airlines." "I'm sure the gate agents can verify that if you'd like," Jenkins nodded slowly. "We'll see about that." He radioed in a request for additional verification, describing Simone by physical appearance. The language he used, African-American female mid-30s, wearing a pilot uniform, possibly unauthorized, sent a cold jolt through Simone's spine. She had heard of travelers being profiled unfairly, but never imagined it would happen to her, especially in uniform at her own gate. A crowd began to form. Some passengers already queued for the LAX flight were now leaning in to see what was unfolding. One gentleman, evidently an aviation enthusiast, recognized Simone. He approached timidly. "Excuse me, officer. That's Captain Simone Carter. I've flown with her before, on a different route. Is there some sort of misunderstanding?" Jenkins cast him a stony glare. "Sir, step back. We're conducting official business here." Simone felt the prickle of embarrassment as more eyes locked onto her. She raised her voice a notch, addressing Jenkins directly. "Officer, my airline credentials and driver's license both prove who I am. If there's an additional verification process, the gate agents have our flight manifest and employee roster. I'd appreciate if you'd expedite that, because we're on a tight schedule." Wesley nodded in agreement. "This is unusual. If there's a concern, maybe we should speak with airport security management or the American Airlines station manager. They know us. Jenkins's jaw tightened. He seemed momentarily at a loss, as though the immediate presence of so many onlookers complicated his plan. "Fine," he said abruptly, waving an airport staff member over. A young gate agent with the name tag, Caroline, approached cautiously, eyes darting between the officer and Simone. Simone spoke first, trying to keep the situation from escalating. "Caroline, would you please confirm my ID in your system? I'm Captain Simone. Carter pilot in command for Flight 784. Caroline nodded. "Yes, Captain Carter. I can do that. One moment." She headed to her computer at the gate podium, typing rapidly. The keyboard clacking filled the silence. Officer Jenkins crossed his arms, unconvinced. "We'll see if your story checks out," he muttered. The tension around them was almost tangible. Simone noticed a few passengers filming the interaction with their phones. This made her uneasy. She had no desire to become a viral spectacle. Still, she also recognized that documentation might help ensure she was treated fairly. After a moment, Caroline cleared her throat. "Yes, officer. Captain Carter is officially listed as the pilot in command for American Airlines, Flight 784 to Los Angeles. Mr. Chen here is the first officer. Both are fully authorized." Jenkins's lips twitched, annoyance flaring in his gaze. He tried to mask it, as if the confirmation had derailed whatever suspicion he clung to. Slowly he handed Simone's driver's license back. "I'll still need you to answer some questions," he insisted. Simone's voice hardened. "I'm happy to answer any legitimate inquiries, officer. But let's do so quickly. The passengers on this flight deserve not to be delayed." For a fleeting second, Jenkins looked like a child caught in a power struggle. Simone recognized that look, the reluctance to concede, the refusal to admit an error in front of an audience. She braced herself for whatever came next. Jenkins seemed determined to find something, anything to justify his intrusion, and Simone, who had trained to handle in-flight emergencies, realized this might be a ground-based crisis, requiring just as much calm, skill, and fortitude. Caroline, the gate agent, tapped her foot nervously. A digital clock on the nearby flight information screen read 7:15 a.m. The flight was scheduled to depart at 8:00 a.m. Every minute spent here meant precious time, lost on final checks, passenger boarding, and pre-flight briefings. Simone sensed the mounting stress on everyone. Officer Jenkins gestured for Simone and Wesley to step aside from the crowd. "We need a bit more privacy," he said, tersely leading them to a roped-off area near a pillar. A few onlookers tried to follow, but Jenkins held up a hand to keep them back. "Let's make this brief," Simone said, crossing her arms over her uniform jacket. She felt no need to hide her frustration. "Now you have my name, rank ID, and the airline's confirmation. What else do you need?" Jenkins flipped open a small notepad. Something straight out of an old police procedural. "Explain where you were before arriving at the gate." Simone exchanged a baffled glance with Wesley. "I started my day at home, came through the staff entrance, and proceeded to the crew lounge to meet my first officer. Then we headed here. Nothing unusual. Did anyone approach you or talk to you on your way? Any interactions that might have raised concern?" Simone's jaw tightened. Only the normal greetings with TSA at the staff checkpoint and a quick talk with the gate agent. "That's standard for a captain preparing a flight." Jenkins scribbled some notes. "How did you get that uniform?" Wesley made a disbelieving sound. "This is official American Airlines attire. Captains purchase and maintain their own uniforms, of course, but they're only authorized after they earn the rank." "Is that so hard to grasp?" Jenkins shot him a glare, then returned his attention to Simone. And how long have you worked for American Airlines? 10 years, Simone replied, her voice clipped. I started as a first officer on smaller aircraft and upgraded to captain status last year. Another flurry of writing in Jenkins's notebook. Simone's mind reeled. Why was he so determined to question her credentials? She half suspected that some passenger or random bystander had flagged her out of prejudice, telling security or the police. That pilot doesn't look legit. Maybe someone saw a black woman in a captain's uniform and decided it couldn't be real. The thought stung. Wesley glanced at his watch. Officer, we're running out of time to conduct our mandatory cockpit inspections before departure. The aircraft is parked at gate D25. The ground crew is waiting on our sign-off. Caroline, the gate agent, poked her head around the rope. Sorry to interrupt, but we need Captain Carter on the aircraft soon to handle some final details. Passengers will start boarding in 20 minutes. Jenkins pursed his lips. We'll be done when I say we're done. He turned back to Simone. Where were you before you joined American Airlines? Something inside. Simone snapped. She was well accustomed to thorough background checks. She had undergone them yearly for her pilot's license, not to mention the airline's own vetting. She'd also earned a spotless record. This interrogation felt less like standard procedure and more like a personal inquisition. Officer Jenkins, if you want my full employment, history, feel free to request it through American Airlines HR department. I've complied with every request you've made, provided ID, and received confirmation from the airline itself. I have a plane to Captain Jenkins, stiffened at her assertive tone, but Simone no longer cared about his bruised pride. She refused to be bullied. She'd seen it happen to too many people, friends and strangers who were pressured into cowering. She was a pilot, a leader, and she wasn't about to let this man's suspicion derail her flight or dignity. Wesley quietly added, We're both FAA certified. Our training records and clearances are all on file. If you have further questions, you can direct them to the airline or the FAA. We need to get to the aircraft now. Simone noticed Jenkins's face flush. He looked at her uniform, at the stripes and wings that symbolized her authority, and she sensed his unwillingness to let go of the notion that she might be a fraud. But he couldn't ignore the tangible proof that kept piling up. Suddenly, a new figure approached, an airport security supervisor named Clarissa James, recognized by her bright neon vest and ID badge on a lanyard. She stepped between Jenkins and Simone. Officer, is there a concern here that airport security, or TSA, hasn't already cleared? Her voice was firm. Her presence commanding. Simone felt a wave of gratitude. Perhaps Clarissa's intervention would break this stalemate. Jenkins cleared his throat, attempting a more official posture. We received a complaint about someone impersonating a pilot. We're verifying. Clarissa gave a thin smile. We verified. Captain Simone. Carter is legit. If you need more detail, TSA management can confirm. But she needs to board that aircraft now, or we risk a delay. Jenkins hesitated, tension crackling in the space between them. Finally, he snapped his notepad shut. All right, he mumbled, but I'll be following up. With that, he turned on his heel and strode off, the crowd parting to let him pass. Simone exhaled a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Clarissa gave her a sympathetic nod. Oh, sorry about that, Captain. Some people can't let go of a call even after the facts come out. Thank you, Simone said softly, relieved to have this ordeal paused if not fully resolved. She turned to Wesley. Let's get to the cockpit before anything else crops up. He nodded, and together they headed toward the jet bridge. Despite the tension still coursing through her veins, Simone forced herself to focus on the tasks ahead. Safety checks, pre-flight procedures, passenger comfort. These were her priorities still. She couldn't shake the feeling that Officer Jenkins wasn't done with her. Something about his demeanor promised that he'd be back, determined to prove he was right, even if it meant twisting facts in the process. Stepping onto the aircraft, Simone felt the familiar ambiance of a Boeing 737. 800, the faint hum of ventilation, the overhead bins waiting to be loaded, and the subtle whiff of cleaning supplies from the night's maintenance. Flight attendants bustled about, stowing supplies and preparing the cabin. A few offered quick smiles of solidarity when they glimpsed Simone's stressed expression. Word had traveled fast that something had happened outside. Wesley placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder as they passed through first class, heading for the cockpit. "Ignore Jenkins," he murmured. "We've got a job to do." Simone forced a small smile. "Right, let's focus on the flight." Their footsteps echoed on the thin carpet as they entered the cockpit, a snug space filled with blinking panels and digital screens. Her tension eased marginally. This was her domain, the place where her skills and training spoke louder than any prejudiced assumption. She settled into the left seat, the captain's seat, and flipped open her binder of checklists. Wesley took the right seat, hooking his headset around his neck. "Starting the pre-flight check," he said, toggling various switches. "Fuel levels look good. Ground crew is finishing up the last of the baggage." Simone nodded, checking the overhead panel for circuit breakers and verifying that all systems were in the green. She spoke into the intercom to coordinate with the lead flight attendant. Kelly, this is Captain Carter. Are we set for passenger boarding?" Kelly's voice crackled back. "Yes." "Captain Gate, agent. Caroline is about to start the process." "We're expecting a full flight," Simone confirmed and turned to Wesley. "Let's do the final weather check." He read off the METAR and TAF reports for the route to LAX clear skies at cruising altitude, a slight headwind. Some mild turbulence near Dallas, but nothing major, all manageable. When everything seemed ready, Simone took a moment to breathe. The cockpit was her sanctuary, but the events of the morning still weighed heavily on her mind. She wondered how many people in the airport were now gossiping about that suspicious pilot fiasco. She also worried about how the confrontation might escalate if Officer Jenkins decided to interfere again. Passengers began filing in the gentle rumble of overhead bins being opened and shut. Simone could hear bits of conversation, eager travelers discussing their plans in Los Angeles, business people reviewing slides on laptops, a family wrangling small children, ordinary hustle and bustle. But then a ripple of murmurs rose from the cabin, and Simone heard Kelly's voice trying to soothe someone near the cockpit door. Before she could piece it together, the cockpit door swung open, unlocked still as they hadn't sealed it for departure yet, and Officer Jenkins stepped inside, wearing a reflective vest borrowed from a ramp official. Simone's heart clenched. "Captain Carter," he said tersely, eyeing the flight deck. "I have a few follow-up questions. A matter of ensuring passenger safety." Wesley bristled. "We're about to depart, officer." "This is hardly the time for more questions. We have a schedule to keep." Simone felt her professional composure slip. "Officer Jenkins, please step back. This is restricted space. I can't allow you here without official cause or the airline's explicit permission." Jenkins ignored her, scanning the controls as if looking for something suspicious. "I'm well within my jurisdiction to ensure nobody is endangering this aircraft. We had a complaint about an impersonator, and I'm verifying there's no contraband or security threat." Her temper flared. She shot a look at Wesley, who seemed ready to physically escort Jenkins out if needed. But Simone gestured for calm. "Officer, you are not TSA, nor are you FAA security. If you suspect a genuine threat, you need to contact the Federal Air Marshal or coordinate with the airline's security. Barging onto the flight deck unannounced is a serious breach of protocol. Jenkins jutted his chin out defiantly. "I do what I must for safety. Captain, behind him." Kelly and a couple of passengers peered in. Concerned, Wesley stood from his seat, towering a few inches over. "Jenkins, Captain Carter is fully authorized. You are interfering with flight operations, and that's a federal offense if done without due cause. I suggest you step out now." Jenkins's gaze flicked between them, a stubborn set to his jaw. For a fraught moment, Simone feared he might refuse forcing a standoff. But then he exhaled sharply. "You want me out, fine. But don't think this is over." With a curt nod, he turned on his heel and left the cockpit, nearly bumping into Kelly as he stormed into the galley. Kelly quickly shut the cockpit door behind him. Simone and Wesley exchanged tense glances. "He can't do that." Wesley muttered, hands trembling slightly. "Entering the cockpit unauthorized." "That's a serious breach." Simone nodded, swallowing a lump in her throat. "I'll file a report with airport security after we land. For now, let's maintain composure. The passengers don't need this drama." She tried to refocus on the pre-flight tasks, but her mind raced. Jenkins had crossed a line. She questioned his motives. Was it pure harassment, or had he convinced himself he was performing some twisted version of his duty? Either way, Simone had a plane to fly, and she wouldn't let him jeopardize the safety and schedule of her flight. Whatever fallout awaited, she'd face it after they touched down in Los Angeles. Once the cockpit door was securely locked, Simone and Wesley continued final preparations. The flight attendants commenced the safety briefing for passengers. Despite the knot of anxiety in her chest, Simone knew she had to project calm professionalism. She eased the throttle forward during pushback, mindful that any slip in her focus could compromise safety. Their taxi to the runway was smooth, and air traffic control granted them a timely clearance. Soon American Airlines Flight 84 roared into the morning sky, leaving the Atlanta skyline behind. The climb felt freeing, as if the tensions on the ground were momentarily out of reach, but Simone knew they weren't gone for good. Leveling off at cruising altitude, Simone initiated the standard check-ins. Wesley contacted the cabin to see if everything was going well. Kelly reported that a few passengers seemed uneasy about the earlier commotion, but otherwise the flight was proceeding normally. No sign of Officer Jenkins, of course. He wasn't on the manifest. When the cockpit settled into the routine of monitoring instruments and maintaining course, Simone allowed her thoughts to wander. She had faced microaggressions before: passengers questioning if she was really a pilot, older colleagues making offhand remarks about the new generation. But Jenkins had turned suspicion into something official, forcibly intruding into her workspace. The memory of him stepping into the cockpit made her blood simmer. Wesley cleared his throat. "Simone, you okay?" He rarely used her first name on duty, but they were alone, so it seemed fitting. She considered her response, then nodded. "I will be just frustrated. It's the kind of thing that can derail your whole day." He sighed, adjusting a dial on the autopilot. "Yeah, I get it." That was some next-level nonsense back there. Simone tried to focus on the horizon. She knew getting emotional in the cockpit wouldn't help. She needed a clear head to land this aircraft safely in LAX. The flight path took them over the southern states, crossing Mississippi, and parts of Texas. Clear skies stretched ahead. Passengers settled in for the longer flight, occasionally calling for beverages or flipping through in-flight entertainment. A few hours passed, and with each mile closer to Los Angeles, Simone felt the tension ease. She reminded herself that she'd soon file a formal complaint and let the airline's legal team handle Jenkins's misconduct. Then, halfway through the flight, Wesley broke the relative calm. "Simone, I just got a message from dispatch." He gestured to a small printer, spitting out text. It's an internal note, apparently. Airport police in Atlanta are investigating the incident. They want you to call upon arrival." She raised an eyebrow. "Investigating on whose behalf, ours or Jenkins's?" Wesley shrugged, not clear. They said, "Officer Jenkins filed a report about your confrontation. The airline is cooperating. Please contact the station manager in LAX after touchdown." Simone groaned quietly. "So he's doubling down. He's determined to prove I'm some kind of threat or fraud." "Seems like it," Wesley replied, sighing. "But you've got the entire airline behind you. The gate agent, the airport security supervisor. They all witnessed what happened." He won't get far. Still, Simone worried. She'd read stories of how a single complaint, even unfounded, could spiral into bureaucratic nightmares. And while American Airlines typically supported its employees in such disputes, Simone felt uneasy. The idea of Jenkins building a case cast a shadow over her sense of justice. Why was he so relentless, resigned to handle it later? She forced herself back to the flight. The hours ticked by. Turbulence near Dallas forced them to change altitude, but Simone guided the plane smoothly. She made periodic announcements to keep passengers informed. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Carter. We're expecting to arrive in Los Angeles on schedule." Each announcement reaffirmed her authority, and perhaps ironically, her legitimacy in the ears of the 150 passengers on board. She couldn't see them, but she sensed some might be reflecting on the morning's drama, realizing just how qualified and composed she was. Eventually, they began their descent into LAX. The city sprawled below freeways, palm trees, and a haze that seemed to envelop the coastline. Simone and Wesley executed a textbook approach, lining up with the runway with practiced skill. Simone guided the aircraft for a smooth landing. Tires screeched gently against asphalt, and the plane slowed under controlled thrust reversers. Pulling into the gate, Simone felt a rush of pride. The flight had been routine, exactly as it should be, but she knew her day was far from over. As soon as she switched off the engines, she braced herself for the next round of inquiries, this time in Los Angeles, far from the scene of the original confrontation. She unclipped her headset, exchanging a weary glance with Wesley. "All right," she murmured. "Let's see what awaits us on the ground." After docking at Gate 57 in Terminal 4 of Los Angeles International Airport, Simone and Wesley went through the standard post-flight routines. They completed the shutdown checklists and handed over the cockpit to the ground crew. As they exited the aircraft, an American Airlines station manager, Marcos Delgado, met them at the gate. Marcos offered a professional but worried smile. "Captain Carter, First Officer Chen, welcome to LAX. I'm afraid we need to talk in private. There's a conference room we can use." Simone nodded, feeling a wave of déjà vu. "Lead the way." They made their way through the bustling terminal flight attendants, trailing close behind. Simone noticed a few curious glances from passengers who recognized her from the flight. She did her best to keep her expression neutral, though inside she churned with apprehension. Marcos ushered them into a small conference room near the airline's operations office. The walls were bare, save for a large whiteboard and a single-framed photograph of an American Airlines jet. He gestured for them to sit around a table. Once the door clicked shut, Marcos leaned forward. "I've been briefed about the incident in Atlanta." He began tapping on a tablet in front of him. "Officer Jenkins submitted a formal report accusing you, Captain Carter, of impersonating a pilot and resisting lawful questioning." Simone's jaw dropped. "Impersonating a pilot? I'm literally on the airline's roster with a valid pilot's license." How can he claim that with a straight face? Marcos gave a sympathetic shrug. According to his statement, he received a tip about suspicious activity from an unnamed passenger. He says he tried to verify your credentials, but you and the crew were uncooperative. Wesley bristled. That's absurd. We showed him everything he asked for. Multiple IDs, airline confirmations. He stormed into the cockpit unannounced. Marcos nodded gravely. Yes, I've already spoken with the gate agent Carolyn and the security supervisor Clarissa James, who back your account. The airline is fully on your side, but local law enforcement in Atlanta might still push for an investigation. We'll handle the legal aspects. However, the press may catch wind of this, especially if Jenkins decides to escalate. Simone rubbed her temples, feeling a headache forming. This is outrageous. I can't believe we're even having this conversation. Marcos's expression softened. I know. Unfortunately, these things happen, but rest assured the airline's legal team is prepared to refute every claim. There's also talk that some passengers caught parts of the confrontation on video. That might be good, Simone said, forcing a hopeful note into her voice. It could show we complied fully and that Jenkins was out of line. Marcos nodded. Precisely. Also, Clarissa James from airport security in Atlanta indicated she's willing to testify if it goes that far. He paused, flipping through a few notes on his tablet. For now, Captain Carter, the airline wants you to stand down from flying for a few days, just while this gets sorted. With pay, of course. It's not a suspension, just a precaution to avoid further conflict if Jenkins tries to confront you again. At the airport, Simone's shoulders slumped. He's effectively benching me from my job over a bogus claim. Wesley reached out and squeezed Simone's forearm. It's just a short break to clear the air. We all know you're innocent. She appreciated the reassurance, but still burned with indignation. The notion of being forced off the roster even temporarily stung. She had flown through storms, mechanical failures and medical emergencies without missing a beat. Yet now she was being grounded because of someone else's bias and a bureaucratic reaction. Marcos continued. We have to play this by the book. The last thing we want is a legal fiasco that escalates into a public relations nightmare. Meanwhile, you can rest here in LA or fly back as a passenger if you prefer. You'll have full pay and the support of the union as well. Simone took a slow breath. All right, I understand. It's just, it feels so wrong. Marcos frowned. I'm sorry. We all are. I'll keep you updated with any developments. Before leaving, Simone asked, is there any chance Officer Jenkins will try to get me arrested if I return to Atlanta in uniform? Marcus's eyes flickered with concern. We've contacted the airport police department. They're aware of the situation. Jenkins is an officer with the city police assigned to the airport, so the chain of command is a bit tangled. But from what I gather, his superiors have doubts about his report already. With enough evidence, we think they'll dismiss his complaint. Just be cautious. Simone nodded, her mind whirling. She left the conference room with Wesley in tow, feeling torn between anger and relief that the airline at least believed in her. The flight attendants gave her encouraging pats on the shoulder as they parted ways in the terminal. Simone forced a smile for them. She stared out a window at the lines of aircraft, each representing a web of journeys, stories, and possibilities. She had joined aviation to connect people across distances, to prove she could defy not just gravity, but expectations too. Yet here she was, grounded by an accusation that defied all logic. She wondered if Jenkins realized the storm he'd unleashed. Perhaps that was his intention, but Simone resolved she wouldn't let him rewrite the narrative of who she was. She was Captain Simone Carter, and no one's prejudice was going to strip her of that. That evening in Los Angeles, Simone sat in a modest hotel room provided by American Airlines for crew overnights. The view outside her window overlooked the shimmering city lights and the distant hum of traffic on the 405 freeway. Typically, she enjoyed these layovers, an opportunity to unwind, explore a local restaurant, or catch up on reading. But tonight, her thoughts were consumed by the day's events. She scrolled through her phone, checking messages from colleagues and friends who had heard rumors of her run-in with law enforcement. Her best friend April, a flight attendant for United Airlines, had left an urgent voicemail. "Girl, I saw something about you on social media. Call me ASAP." Simone sighed. It seemed word was spreading faster than she'd anticipated, feeling the need to talk. She dialed April's number. Her friend picked up on the second ring. "Simone, oh my God, are you okay?" Simone mustered a weary chuckle. "I'm fine physically. Just aggravated. I got singled out for suspicious behavior." While in full uniform, next thing I know I'm being interrogated, and now I'm practically benched from flying until this fiasco clears up. April gasped. "That's insane. People at my base in Denver are talking about how a black female captain was hassled. Word travels, you know. Are you safe?" "Yes, I'm safe. The airline is backing me up, but it's humiliating. Plus, there's this creeping fear. What if the officer doubles down, fabricates more claims? A uniform and a badge can hold a lot of power to shape a narrative." April's voice softened. "Listen, you've worked too hard to let this define you. Don't give that cop the satisfaction of seeing you upset. Fight it." Simone felt a flicker of determination. "I plan to. The airline's legal team is gathering evidence. There's rumored video footage from passengers at the gate. That might help." "That's good," April said, relief evident in her tone. "In the meantime, try to relax. You'll be back in the cockpit soon, commanding flights like you always do." After the call, Simone noticed a new email from American Airlines Corporate Communications. She opened it. "Captain Carter, we'd like to coordinate a statement regarding the alleged impersonation incident. Let us know your availability for an interview with our legal counsel." Simone grimaced. So the legal wheels were indeed turning. She typed a brief reply, agreeing to a meeting. Then she flicked through social media. A handful of posts mentioned a black female pilot at ATL harassed by cop. Some threads were supportive, while others included ignorant remarks like, "Probably was acting shady," or "This is why security is important." Simone's anger flared again. How quickly the court of public opinion dished out judgment with no regard for facts. She forced herself to close the apps. Instead, she retrieved a small notebook from her flight bag, an old habit from her early pilot days, when she journaled her experiences. Maybe putting thoughts on paper would help. She scribbled today. "The uniform that once filled me with pride became a target. One officer's prejudice overshadowed a decade of blood, sweat, and tears. I wonder if he knows how many hours I've spent in simulators, how many check rides I passed, how many nights I stayed up studying aerodynamics, meteorology, FAA regulations, just to be worthy of these stripes. Yet in his eyes, it was all an act, a fraud. How many others face this daily, simply for existing in a space someone else decided they don't belong?" Her pen paused. She found herself recalling her first day at flight school, the subtle glances from classmates who doubted her simply because she was a young black woman in a largely white male environment. She'd silenced them all with her skill and dedication, but she couldn't fix a societal bias alone. She continued writing. "I won't be coward. I'm a pilot. I belong in that cockpit. This is bigger than me. It's about every professional who's doubted, targeted, or undermined due to prejudice. I promise I'll stand firm, not just for myself, but for everyone who needs an example that we're here, we're qualified, and we refuse to be erased. Once she finished, she closed the notebook, feeling slightly lighter. Setting it aside, she switched off the lamp. Tomorrow she would meet with the legal team, hopefully gather more details, and prepare to face whatever Jenkins might hurl her way next. In the silence of her room, she listened to the faint hum of air conditioning and let her eyelids grow heavy. Darkness enveloped her, and the day's tension ebbed. She was determined to meet the next dawn with renewed resolve, prepared to fight for the position she had rightfully earned. The next morning, Simone found herself in a conference room at LAX's administrative offices, seated across from two people who represented different facets of her airline's support. Lydia Campbell, an attorney from American Airlines legal department, and Trevor Banks, a representative from the pilots' union. Both greeted her warmly, but wore expressions of seriousness. Lydia wasted no time. She opened a slim laptop and angled it so Simone could see. Captain Carter, we've compiled statements from Gate Agent Carolyn Security Supervisor Clarissa James, your first officer, and at least 3 passengers. Additionally, we have a short video from a passenger's phone capturing part of Officer Jenkins's confrontation at the gate. Simone leaned forward, heart pounding. Can I see it? Lydia nodded and pressed play. The screen showed a shaky vertical video. Jenkins stood with his arms crossed, confronting Simone at gate D25. The audio was faint, but you could hear Caroline say, "Yes, Captain Carter is on our official list." Jenkins responded with something about needing more proof. The camera then panned to show Wesley stepping in, supporting Simone's credentials. The clip ended abruptly. "It's not long," Lydia said, "but it verifies your account that you presented valid ID, and Jenkins continued to question you." Trevor chimed in, folding his arms. "This is enough to establish that you complied. The union is fully behind you. We intend to push for a formal apology from the Atlanta Police Department if they don't drop this nonsense." Simone felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you. I want to do whatever I can to clear my name quickly, and I'm also worried Officer Jenkins might escalate this further." Lydia opened another document. "We've received a copy of Jenkins's official complaint. It alleges uncooperative behavior from an individual claiming to be an airline pilot. He says he had reason to believe you were using a stolen uniform. His evidence: a tip from an unnamed passenger who reportedly said you were moving around the gate area nervously." Simona's eyes flared in disbelief. "Nervously, I was greeting passengers and coordinating with the gate agent." Trevor shook his head. "This is typical of a manufactured excuse. The union has seen it before when folks don't believe a certain person fits the profile for a role. They latch on to anything body language, a second-hand tip, you name it." Lydia scrolled further. "He also mentions you refused to comply once he requested more ID, which is contradicted by the statements and the video." Simone rubbed her temples. "He's doubling down on falsehoods. How do we counter that?" Effectively, Lydia offered a small smile. "Don't worry, we have the truth on our side. We'll be issuing a formal response to the Atlanta Police Department, including witness statements and the video. We'll demand an internal review of Jenkins's conduct. Usually in these cases, the department might quietly drop the claim to avoid embarrassment." Simone exhaled slowly, relief mingling with lingering anger. "All right, so what do I do now?" Trevor answered. "Stay available for any follow-up. We suggest you not speak publicly or to media until we finalize the statement, so nothing gets twisted. The union wants to ensure your words aren't taken out of context. She nodded. Understood. And what about the airline? They've put me on temporary leave, Lydia answered gently. Yes, with pay. That's standard. They don't want you ambushed by Jenkins or anyone else at the airport, while this is still a hot issue. It might only be a few days a week at most, until we get an official withdrawal of the complaint. Simone fiddled with her phone, checking the time. She hated being benched. Flying was her life, and every day grounded felt wasted, but logically, she saw the wisdom in caution. Trevor rose, offering a handshake. We appreciate your cooperation, Captain Carter. The union stands with you. If you have any mental or emotional strain, we can arrange counseling sessions. This kind of incident can be traumatic. Simone managed a tight smile. I'll keep that in mind. Thank you both. They wrapped up, and Simone left the conference room more informed, if not entirely calmer. At least she wasn't alone in this battle. American Airlines, the pilots' union, even some well-meaning strangers on social media had rallied behind her. Yet the fact remained. She was sidelined because one officer refused to believe she belonged in her uniform. Outside in the corridor, a wave of voices and rolling luggage reminded her she was at one of the world's busiest airports, a hub for countless journeys. She longed to be back in the cockpit, charting her course in the skies. Instead, she found herself navigating red tape and prejudice on the ground. Still, she couldn't shake a sense of rising determination. If she had to fight for her rightful place, she would, and she would do so with the same precision and courage she applied to flying at 35,000 feet 3 days later. Simone tried her best to enjoy the unexpected downtime in Los Angeles. She visited a few local spots, strolled the Santa Monica Pier, watched surfers ride the Pacific waves, yet every moment felt tinged with a restlessness to get back in the cockpit. She checked in daily with Lydia and Trevor, who said the legal wheels turned slowly. The airline had filed a formal request for Jenkins's complaint to be dismissed. The Atlanta Police Department had yet to make a definitive statement. On the fourth morning, Simone's phone buzzed with an unknown Atlanta number. She hesitated, then answered. Hello. A measured voice responded. Captain Carter. This is Captain Evelyn Richards from the Atlanta Police Department's Professional Standards Unit. May I speak with you regarding Officer Jenkins? Simone's pulse quickened. Yes, of course. Thank you. I've been assigned to investigate a complaint of misconduct by Officer Jenkins, in which you are named. We've reviewed preliminary evidence, including airport security footage and witness statements. I'd like to ask you a few clarifying questions. Simone's mind buzzed with relief. Finally, some official movement. Certainly. I'm currently in Los Angeles, but I'm available by phone or video call anytime. Captain Richards was businesslike but polite. She requested details about the confrontation from Simone's arrival at the gate to Jenkins's intrusion into the cockpit. Simone recounted everything, meticulously referencing the gate agent Carolyn, the passenger's phone recordings, and Clarissa James's intervention. Richards thanked her for the clarity and ended the call with a promise to follow up soon. That afternoon, Simone's phone rang again. This time it was Lydia, the airline's attorney. Captain Carter, good news. We've heard from the Atlanta PD. They're seriously considering dropping Jenkins's claims. Apparently, your testimony lines up perfectly with every other witness, while Jenkins's story has inconsistencies. The big question is whether they'll discipline him internally. Simone felt the tension in her shoulders ease. That's a relief. I just want to clear my record and get back to flying. Lydia chuckled softly. I think we're almost there. The union is also pushing for an apology. though that might be tougher to secure. Within 24 hours, a statement arrived from Atlanta. PD Officer Jenkins's report lacked sufficient evidence of wrongdoing by Captain Carter. The department is concluding its investigation into the impersonation claim. We regret any inconvenience. Simone read the words twice, feeling a mix of triumph and frustration that it took so long for them to reach the obvious conclusion. The airline swiftly reinstated her flight status. Trevor from the union called congratulating her. Your flight schedule is back on for next week. We're also scheduling a press briefing to reaffirm that American Airlines stands against profiling. You're welcome to speak or not, depending on your comfort. Simone mulled it over. I'd like to make a brief statement, if that's okay with the airline. Something about how we can't let biases overshadow facts. Trevor agreed. Sounds good. We'll coordinate with corporate communications. On her final day in L. Simone woke early, feeling an unburdened lightness in her chest for the first time in what felt like ages. She slipped into her uniform just to remind herself she was once again free to do what she loved. Fly. As she stood in front of the hotel mirror, adjusting the gold stripes on her jacket sleeves, she allowed a moment of reflection. The uniform was more than fabric. It embodied her identity as a pilot, her years of training, her resilience against adversity. No one could take that from her. She strolled to a nearby cafe for breakfast, ignoring a few curious stares from passers-by. Maybe they'd never seen a black female pilot in uniform, or maybe they just admired her confident stride. Either way, she met their eyes with a cordial nod, unashamed and unafraid. The sun was bright overhead, the day brimming with possibilities. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Caroline, the gate agent who first defended her in Atlanta. Saw the news. So happy for you, Captain. I look forward to seeing you back at ATL soon. Maybe on your next rotation. Simone typed back a heartfelt reply. Thank you. I can't wait to be back in the cockpit where I belong. She sipped her coffee, savoring the rich aroma, and allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. Hard karma might still be circling for Officer Jenkins. But for Simone Carter, the skies were open once more. A week later, Simone Carter strode through the familiar corridors of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, her home base. This time, she felt neither the uneasy stares of suspicious bystanders nor the intrusive presence of any overzealous officer. She greeted fellow pilots and ground staff with genuine warmth, many of them congratulating her on the resolution of her recent ordeal. The airline's PR team had arranged a brief media event in an upstairs conference room near the main concourse. Nothing flashy, just a handful of reporters, some airport officials, and a few representatives from the pilots' union. Simone stood at a small podium, wearing her pressed uniform and a calm, resolved expression. Trevor introduced her, summarizing the events. Captain Carter was wrongly accused of impersonation by a misinformed officer. She cooperated fully, and we're pleased to confirm that the Atlanta PD has dismissed all accusations. American Airlines stands firmly behind her. He stepped aside, allowing Simone the stage. She took a measured breath, scanning the modest crowd. Some had cameras or notepads, others simply looked curious. Thank you all for being here. She began, voice steady. My name is Captain Simone Carter. I've been with American Airlines for 10 years, and flying is my passion. Recently, I experienced an incident where my legitimacy as a pilot was questioned due to a tip that I was suspicious. A hush fell over the room. Fortunately, Simone continued. The truth prevailed, but this situation brought to light a bigger issue. How easily someone's career, dignity and safety can be jeopardized by assumptions and biases, whether conscious or unconscious. If someone in uniform with clearly documented credentials can be targeted, imagine what happens to those without the privilege of official titles or corporate backing. She paused, letting her words sink in. I don't blame people for wanting security. We all want to feel safe, but we must ensure that security measures are fair, transparent and fact-based, not rooted in stereotypes. I'm grateful for the swift support I received from my airline, the pilots' union, and many everyday passengers and staff who spoke up. Their voices mattered. Reporters scribbled notes. One raised a hand. Captain Carter, do you believe Officer Jenkins should face disciplinary action? Simone chose her words carefully. That's for his department to decide. My hope is that everyone learns from this. A mistake was made, and it had real consequences. Accountability is important, but so is the opportunity for growth. If this prompts better training and oversight, then maybe it serves a purpose. Another reporter asked, "What's next for you?" Simone smiled gently. "Back to doing what I love, flying airplanes. I'll continue championing a culture where competence is recognized without prejudice. We can't let fear dictate our interactions. The sky is big enough for everyone." After the brief Q&A, Simone stepped away from the podium. She felt a rush of relief. The union and PR team fielded additional questions, freeing her to exit the conference room. On her way out, she spotted gate agent Carolyn and security supervisor Clarissa James, who had come to show their support. They exchanged hugs, each remembering how they'd tried to protect her from injustice at that gate. Before leaving the airport that afternoon, Simone made a quiet detour back to Gate D25. The place looked the same, bustling with travelers, the overhead announcements calling for final boarding. She spotted a vacant seat near the window and took a moment to sit gazing out at the planes. She recalled the day Officer Jenkins had demanded her ID right here, how small she had felt under his scrutiny. Now, though she felt anything but small, she felt affirmed by her airline, her peers, and her own unwavering sense of self. She rose, adjusted her cap, and walked away from Gate D25 with a head held high. The uniform she wore had been tested by suspicion, but it emerged unscathed. And so had she, Simone. Carter was the captain of her flight, the master of her fate, and nothing, no bias, no baseless accusation could rob her of that truth again. A single moment of prejudice threatened to derail everything Captain Simone Carter had built through years of dedication, study, and unyielding ambition. When a police officer at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport demanded she prove her legitimacy, despite wearing the captain's stripes, Simone faced the chilling realization that bias can strike anywhere, even for someone in uniform. Yet this storm ultimately gave way to a new dawn of understanding. Backed by her airline's supportive colleagues and undeniable evidence, Simone not only reclaimed her rightful place in the cockpit, but also sparked important conversations about fairness and equal respect. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button, share it with friends who believe in overcoming obstacles, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful tales of courage and determination. Your support helps us shine a light on stories that deserve to be told.